All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating medical mystery. It's one where the clues to a huge problem in the brain aren't actually in the brain at all. Instead, they're hidden in our body's delicate chemical balance, which is all controlled by our kidneys. This is a story about the incredible and honestly kind of surprising connection between our brain, our blood, and the organs that keep it all running smoothly.
So let's start with this big question. Just imagine this. A patient shows up, they're suddenly confused, maybe they have a seizure or they've slipped into a coma. Your first instinct, of course, is to look at the brain, right? But what if the real culprit is hiding somewhere else entirely? That's the exact puzzle we're going to piece together today. This is such a classic scenario for neurologists. They get a call about a patient with a sudden change in their mental state. And the challenge is always the same. Is this a brand new problem with the brain itself, or is the brain just the victim of something going wrong somewhere else in the body? A systemic issue that's throwing everything completely out of whack. And what makes it so tough is that the first clues are often super vague. We're not talking about some dramatic, clear-cut symptom. It usually starts with these little fluctuations. The patient is a bit drowsier than normal, their alertness kind of comes and goes, or they just seem off. These little signs are so easy to miss, but they're often the first whisper of a major storm that's brewing inside the body. So where does the investigation even begin? Well, the first major piece of this puzzle is one of the most basic things in our body, salt, or to be more specific, sodium. It sounds so simple, but the amount of sodium in our blood has this incredibly powerful and sometimes really dangerous effect on our brain. To really get it, think of your brain as a delicate sponge. When sodium levels in the blood drop too low, water gets pulled into the brain cells, making that sponge swell up. On the flip side, if sodium gets too high, water gets pulled out of the brain, causing it to actually shrink. And as you can imagine, both of those situations are extremely dangerous. Okay, but here is the absolute crucial point. It's not just about the final number, the level of sodium. The real danger, so often, is about how fast that number changes. See, the brain is amazing. It can adapt to slow, gradual changes over days. But a really rapid shift, up or down, just doesn't give the brain enough time to adjust. And that's when things can go very wrong, very, very fast. And these charts show that perfectly. Look at the one on the left. You can see that the faster the sodium level drops, that steep dive, the more likely a patient is to fall into a stupor or a coma. But a slow drop, the brain can handle it better. It's the exact same story for sodium levels that rise too quickly. Speed is the real enemy here. So this brings us to a really dramatic and frankly tragic twist in the story. If low sodium is the problem, the solution seems obvious, right? Give the patient more sodium. But, and this is a huge but, if you do it too quickly, the treatment itself can become a curse. It can cause a devastating and often permanent brain injury. The condition is called osmotic demyelination syndrome, or ODS. When you correct that sodium too fast, the rapid fluid shifts we were just talking about literally strip the protective coating, it's called myelin, right off the nerve cells in really critical parts of the brain. And that damage can lead to paralysis, trouble speaking and swallowing, or even a coma. And this is what that damage looks like. This is an LRI from a real case, a 40-year-old woman whose low sodium was fixed. That bright white area right in the center, that's damage to a part of the brainstem called the pons. It's the classic sign of a severe form of ODS. I mean, this image is just such a stark, powerful reminder of what can happen when you try to fix the problem too fast. And what's just so cruel about this whole thing is how sneaky it is. This quote really captures the tragedy of it. The patient's sodium gets corrected, and for a little while they seem to be getting better. They're awake, they're talking, everyone thinks the crisis is over. And then, a few days later, the real catastrophic decline begins. It's like a delayed action disaster. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about these electrolyte imbalances, but what causes them to happen in the first place? Well, for that, we have to trace the problem all the way back to its source, the body's master filtration system, the kidneys. When these incredible organs start to fail, the entire system can just spiral into chaos. When the kidneys aren't working well enough, they can't filter out waste products from the blood. So these toxins just build up, and they become poisonous to the brain. This causes a condition called uremic encephalopathy. Basically, it leads to confusion, lethargy, just not being with it. But here's the good news. This one is often reversible once you get the patient on dialysis. So how does a doctor actually spot this? Well, one of the classic physical clues is this sign called asterexis.
People call it a flapping tremor, but it's not really a tremor. You have the patient hold their hands out like they're stopping traffic, and they'll have these sudden, brief lapses where their hands just flap down. It's a real telltale sign that the brain is being affected by a toxic metabolic problem. But, of course, there's another twist. Even if you know the patient has kidney failure, and you know they're confused, you can't just assume it's uremic encephalopathy. The neurologist still has to be a detective, because there are other serious conditions that can look just like it. And missing the real diagnosis can have huge consequences. Let's look at a case. A patient who's on dialysis has a seizure. Is it the uremia? Or could it be something else, like a syndrome called PRES, which is caused by super high blood pressure? The clues are different. Uremia, you might see that flap, asterixis. But with PRES, it's much more likely you'll see seizures and vision problems. The real tiebreaker, though, is often the MRI scan. And this is the MRI from that exact case. You see those bright white spots in the back of the brain? That is the classic textbook sign of PRES. This scan was the crucial clue, the smoking gun that solved the puzzle. The patient's problem wasn't just the toxins. It was their blood pressure skyrocketing and causing the brain's blood vessels to leak. Getting that diagnosis right meant they could get the right treatment, control the blood pressure fast. So, as we've seen, from something as simple as a salt imbalance all the way to a failing kidney, the brain is just so deeply affected by the health of the entire body. It's the perfect example of why a neurologist can't just be a brain doctor. They have to be a detective for the whole body, piecing together all these clues from different places to finally solve the mystery. So, what's the bottom line here? What should you take away from all this? First, your brain's health is directly 100% tied to your body's chemistry. Second, always remember that speed matters. A sudden change is way more dangerous than a slow one. Third, a symptom in the brain is often just a clue, a breadcrumb, pointing to a problem somewhere else. And finally, never ever underestimate the kidneys. They really are these silent guardians of our brain function. It's just a powerful reminder that our bodies aren't just a collection of separate parts. They're this deeply interconnected web. And a problem in one tiny corner can send ripples through the entire system in ways we're really only just beginning to understand. It makes you wonder, right? What hidden link will we discover next?